Trommel was a treasure so unbelievable it defied logic. Could this ancient beast still be hiding gold that had slipped through its massive grinding wheels all those years ago? What Parker discovered inside forced him to call the local authorities and the FBI. The gold locked inside an old machine. Parker couldn't ignore the possibilities. If the Trommel had been running day and night for years, there was a real chance that some of that lost gold had built up inside, and not just a little, potentially a fortune's worth. But who in their right mind would just walk away from something like that? Maybe the original owners ran out of money. Maybe they hit a snag they couldn't overcome. Or maybe they had no idea they were leaving behind one of the richest jackpots ever buried in an old mining machine. Whatever the reason, that Trommel wasn't just a rusted hunk of metal, it was a gold vault waiting to be cracked open. Before we dive into this, one thing is certain. What Parker found inside wasn't just gold, and the truth behind this discovery is far more shocking than anyone could have expected. Climbing onto the machine, Parker started scraping off decades of grime and dirt. It seemed like just another dead relic, a ghost of the past. But then he saw it. A shimmer, faint but undeniable, hidden deep inside the machine's inner walls. It couldn't be real. Gold, just sitting there, untouched, ignored for years. But the more he looked, the more he saw, tiny flecks embedded in the worn-down steel, a quiet reminder that this Trommel had been swallowing up more than just rocks and dirt back in its prime. And then, as he dug deeper, what started as a small discovery turned into something absurd. This thing wasn't just dusted with gold, it was packed with it. At first, it was impossible to believe. How could so much gold be sitting in plain sight yet completely overlooked? But the numbers didn't lie. Once the crew started estimating the amount trapped inside, the total value skyrocketed past $400 million. $1,400 million. Just sitting there waiting. It didn't take long to realize why. The old-timers who ran this machine had no idea how much fine gold was slipping through their nets. They were chasing big nuggets, the kind that made for flashy headlines. But this Trommel had been hoarding the small stuff, the kind that, when added up, was worth a fortune. And no one had ever come back to claim it. Now Parker had a problem. He couldn't just scoop up the gold and walk away. If he wanted to cash in, he needed to get the Trommel working again. Easier said than done. The machine was a rusted-out wreck, barely holding together, and moving it was going to be a nightmare. The sheer size alone made it almost impossible. Dragging it out of the wilderness would take cranes, trucks, and a whole lot of patience. And even if they got it to a proper site, there was still the issue of fixing it. Every gear was worn down, every screen busted, every part screaming for repair. If Parker wanted the gold, he had to breathe life back into a long-dead machine. The team got to work. While some worked on restoring the Trommel, others tested the dirt piled up around it, just to see if anything valuable had been left behind. That's when things got even crazier. The dirt wasn't just good, it was insanely rich. Every pan they tested was loaded with gold, far beyond what normal mining sites produced. It was the kind of find that made seasoned miners stop and stare. This wasn't just another abandoned site, it was an untouched gold mine hiding in plain sight. Parker wasted no time. He set up a small processing plant right next to the Trommel, determined to squeeze every last ounce of gold from the ground. With a mix of old-school mining methods and modern technology, he made sure that nothing was wasted. This time, not a single speck of gold was slipping away. The more they dug, the more they realized the true scale of the operation. The Trommel wasn't just part of a single mining site, it had been a crucial part of a much bigger network. Records showed that multiple sites had been feeding into it, moving dirt from one spot to another. If this machine had been holding on to gold for decades, then there could be even more abandoned sites out there with the same hidden treasure. What had started as a simple repair job turned into something much bigger. Parker and his crew weren't just fixing up an old mining machine anymore, they were piecing together a lost chapter of mining history. Every dent, every rusted bolt told the story of miners who had worked themselves to the bone chasing fortune. Some had found it. Others had walked away empty-handed. But this Trommel had been sitting here the whole time, guarding a fortune no one had noticed. For weeks, the team worked non-stop. Every obstacle, every delay only pushed them harder. They weren't just after gold anymore, they were bringing something back to life. Restoring that machine wasn't just about making money. It was about finishing what others had started. The Trommel had chewed through mountains of dirt, spit out tons of rock, and been left behind like a relic of the past. Cleaning the old machine was just the start. Now that Parker knew how much gold was inside, the real work was about to begin, digging up the past to strike it rich. The deeper they dug, the better it got. The gold just kept coming, more than anyone had expected. What started as an old, rusting machine that no one cared about turned into one of the biggest paydays of Parker's mining career. Standing before the beast of a machine, Parker had to take a moment. No, it wasn't new, it wasn't shiny, and it certainly wasn't something most miners would take seriously. It was rusted out, covered in vines, and looked like it had been sitting there forever. Most people would have walked right by it without a second thought. But not Parker. He saw what they didn't. Sometimes, treasure isn't buried deep underground, it's hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right person to see it for what it is. This old machine had once been one of the best gold processors around, separating dirt and rock from precious gold with ridiculous efficiency. But like everything else, time moved on, and newer, faster machines took over. The old ones? They were tossed aside, left to rot in the middle of nowhere. This one was no different, abandoned in a remote mining site, surrounded by broken tools, collapsed wooden structures, and rusted-out equipment. To most, it was just another piece of junk, long forgotten. But Parker, he saw an opportunity most miners would never even consider. Old machines hold on to gold, that's a fact. Over time, tiny gold particles get stuck in the cracks, mixed in with dirt and debris. If this thing had processed gold-rich material back in the day, chances were some of that gold was still trapped inside. To Parker, this wasn't just a machine, it was a locked-up gold vault just waiting to be cracked open. But there was one big problem, getting it out of there. This thing was massive, weighing more than several tons. And it was nowhere near any kind of road. Moving it was going to take serious planning, heavy machinery, and sheer determination. One wrong move and the whole thing could fall apart before they even got a chance to fire it up. Parker's team wasn't about to back down, though. They planned every step, knowing that if they pulled this off, they wouldn't just be moving an old machine, they'd be bringing back something legendary. Finally, after a brutal struggle, they got it to a secure spot. That's when the real work started. Years of sitting out in the elements had done some serious damage. Rust had eaten through important parts, metal had weakened, and some pieces were just flat out missing. To the untrained eye, it looked hopeless. But Parker wasn't about to quit. His crew got to work, tearing the machine apart piece by piece, scraping off layers of rust, replacing broken parts, and reinforcing weak spots. But they didn't stop there. Why just fix it when you can make it even better? They didn't just want the machine working, they wanted it working better than it ever had before. So they upgraded it, adding modern technology to make it more efficient and durable. By mixing old-school craftsmanship with new mining tech, they were creating something one of a kind, a machine that had the reliability of the past but the power of the present. After weeks of relentless work, the moment of truth arrived. The team powered it up, and it roared back to life. The giant drum spun, churning through dirt and rock, pulling out gold with shocking efficiency. Then the real surprise hit them. The gold started pouring out, way more than anyone expected. This machine wasn't just working, it was a gold-making monster. Some of the dirt running through it held gold so rich it stunned even Parker. This wasn't just a lucky find. This was a once-in-a-lifetime jackpot. That rusted-out hunk of metal everyone had ignored had just made Parker one of the luckiest miners in the game. And it wasn't just about the gold, it was about proving a point. This was about vision. About seeing value where others only see junk. About understanding that the best paydays aren't always buried underground. Parker had taken a chance on something no one else believed in, and it paid off in a way that changed everything. His success went beyond one big find. It changed the way people thought about mining. His team showed the world that by mixing old and new, mining could be smarter, more efficient, and even better for the environment. They recovered gold while minimizing damage, setting a new standard for responsible mining. And you better believe other miners were paying attention. Word spread fast. If Parker could do it, what else was out there? How many other junk machines were sitting abandoned, filled with untapped gold? Suddenly, forgotten equipment didn't seem so useless anymore. Parker's discovery sparked a whole new wave of mining, not in unexplored land, but in the rusted-out remains of the past. With the machine running again and gold pouring out, it was clear Parker was made for mining. And that all started when he was just a kid. From a family mine to millionaire miner, Parker Schnabel didn't just stumble into gold mining, he was practically born with dirt on his hands and a shovel nearby. Growing up in Haines, Alaska, with his parents Roger and Nancy, and his brother Payson, He was surrounded by the hum of heavy machinery and the constant hunt for gold. His grandfather, John Schnabel, wasn't just a miner. He was the legend behind the Big Nugget mine, and every bit of knowledge was soaked up like a sponge. By the time most kids were learning to ride bikes, Parker was already handling equipment most adults would be too nervous to touch. Spending childhood at the Big Nugget mine meant hard work was a way of life. While other kids played video games, he was busy learning the ins and outs of mining, operating massive machines, troubleshooting problems, and figuring out how to turn piles of dirt into cold, hard gold. His grandfather saw something special in him, and instead of treating him like a kid, John made sure every little detail about the business was understood. This was no hobby. This was preparation for something much bigger. High school was just a pit stop. Sure, there was basketball and good grades, but the heart was always in the mine. Most teenagers dream about college or traveling the world, but there was only one thing in mind: gold. The moment a diploma was in hand, the traditional path was skipped in favor of taking charge of the Big Nugget mine. Stepping into a leadership role that most people wouldn't dare touch at that age, at just 16, a crew of seasoned miners was being managed, people who had been digging in the dirt for decades. Imagine being a teenager trying to tell grown men what to do. Talk about pressure. But there was no backing down. Tough decisions were made, productivity was pushed, and it was proven that this wasn't just some kid playing boss. A natural ability to lead and problem solve set everything apart, and it didn't take long for people to notice. Then came the big break. In 2010, he became a key player in Discovery Channel's Gold Rush. The show followed miners chasing fortune, but he wasn't just another face in the crowd. He was the fresh blood shaking things up. Viewers were hooked on the determination, the no-nonsense attitude, and the way problems were tackled head-on. The biggest risk of his career came in the 4th season of Gold Rush. Instead of sticking with the family business, he did the